I also got all new valve guides. I went with stock Kawasaki stuff. It's actually not too bad, like 18 bucks a piece or something like that. So they've all been knocked out. Now I've got our cylinder head all stripped down. Next step here, we're going to take this up and go put it in the oven, about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. What that'll do is that'll expand this metal. We've already got our guides in the freezer, which will shrink them. So let's go do that. Typically what you want to do is put this in a cold oven, bring it up to temperature slowly along with the head rather than putting it in a hot oven. Reason being is we don't want to cause any warps to this head. Now while I'm waiting for my cylinder head to cook, I want to get everything prepped here because temperatures are going to start equalizing pretty quickly. So we want to get some boards that we can set our head on because we're going to have to do a little bit of beating. You'll need a valve guide driving tool, and this basically will fit on your valve guide and you can hammer it into the head. We're going to hammer it in from the bottom. You want some way to accurately measure the depth of these things. What I'm going to use is my analog calipers, and going off the spec from Kawasaki, I will set the depth of this pin to how deep that these need to be seated. And this way I can just tap them in, check them, tap them in, and check them. Here are your specs for driving the valve guides. I've got my caliper set for 0.550 and locked down, so it's ready to go when we go to install these valve guides. I don't want to be fussing around with too much stuff because the temperature will equalize too quickly. All right, we got our hot head. I'm going to do the exhaust side first. What you're going to do is put your driver on. We're going to drive them in from the bottom. As we go, we're going to check our distance. And we got a ways to go yet. Now where you're measuring from is from the bottom of the cylinder head to the top of your guide. It's perfect. One down, one to go. Great, now we'll get our intakes done. Now again, for your intakes, don't forget to change your measurement. 0.610. Perfect. Now that we got our guides installed, we have to let this equalize, get back down to room temperature. Now at this point our guides are all in at the right depth. Our cylinder is back to room temperature. Now at this point we just can't install our valves because they're just not going to fit. So these valves are 0.177 of an inch and my reamer is 0.178 of an inch. So we're going to ream these out, and what I'm going to use is an electric drill. Now we certainly don't want to do any damage, so we're going to take our time. As you can see, our valve is going in now. We will do the rest of it with the hone. Now on this head, since all 4 of our valves are the same size, I can use the same reamer. Now once they're all reamed to size, where the valves will go through, again, they're still a little tight, which is perfectly fine. We will now hone them. We're going to use this little tiny ball hone, and we'll run them back and forth a few times with our drill. The next thing I need to check to make sure that the valve seat is perpendicular to the valve guide that we just replaced. And replacing them and reaming them can definitely throw them off, in which case you will get a leak around your valves and you'd have to do a valve job. So before we go too far on this, I'm going to reset the valves and the springs in the head, and we're going to test these to see if they're leaking. If they are leaking, obviously we're going to have to remedy that. All right, now that we got the valves installed, we're going to do a quick leak test. Easiest way to do this with some brake parts cleaner. That works best, or any kind of solvent. You can use water if you don't have that. We want to fill this combustion chamber. And it looks like the fluid level is dropping, so I believe we are going to have a leak for sure. This thing is pouring solvent out of the intake valves. I don't see anything coming out of the exhaust valves. Now another thing we can do is, while the solvent is in here, we'll blow compressed air into the intake and exhaust ports and look for bubbles around the valve. Now I'm going to try to demonstrate that, but the solvent's leaking out pretty fast, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to show you. I mean, that's not even bubbles. That's not even bubbles. That's just pure not sealing. Okay, we got a little bit around the intake, a little bit around the exhaust. We're going to have to redo our 3-angle valve job.